Hey everyone, Quentin Figueroa here with SlayerMint.com, and I'm going to talk to you about how the minimum wage hurts poor people. So we commonly hear about the minimum wage helping people and that kind of thing, but it actually hurts the people that it's trying to help. It's like a lot of kind of socialist policies where they have good intentions and they might be trying to help people, but the reality of what they actually do is they just hurt the people they're trying to help. So let's kind of walk through that. So for one, the minimum wage, it creates unemployment. So in order to raise the minimum wage for any type of job, let's say McDonald's. So somebody's making $8 an hour at McDonald's. When you now raise that wage from $8 an hour at a minimum to say like 10 or 12 or even 15, you're not guaranteeing that the person who's making $8 an hour is going to make that higher wage. All you are doing is saying that this is the price that it's going to cost to hire this service. And if that service, like an $8 an hour employee, if that service that $8 an hour employee is doing can no longer be serviced at that price of 15, then that service is going to be removed or replaced in another way. So that's why when you go to like McDonald's or grocery stores or certain things, you're seeing a lot more of this technological piece where they're replacing employees with technology or with phone apps or things like this where it can be done without an actual human being, because paying somebody a higher minimum wage no longer is beneficial or no longer cost effective to the actual company doing it. So a company needs to make a profit and they need to allocate their funds in a way where they can continue to grow their business, and part of that is how they pay their people and how they balance their checkbook. And when it costs them more money to hire to fulfill a certain job, it makes it to where they either have to get rid of that person or they have to replace that person or multiple people with one higher paid person. So people, they get paid what they're worth. That's what the markets do. Every job is set to pay kind of proportionally to the value that is received from it. That's why you have doctors and lawyers who make a lot of money, because it's a valuable service that people need and not a lot of people can provide that value. So it has a greater demand and necessity for it, but less people can provide it, so people are willing to pay more for that service, and it totally makes sense. Now with somebody like a fast food worker or a janitor or something like this, it's a very low skilled job and a lot of people can do it, so there's a lot of competition in that job, and that's why the price is so low. It's very, the amount of people competing for that job bring down the price. It's a very low demand kind of job. It's not as necessary for people. People don't need to pay as much money for it because more people are willing to do it or have the skills to do it at a lower price. So when you raise the price of whatever job it is, the minimum wage, you're making it so that a low skilled worker can no longer work at that job unless they have a certain amount of skills. You're basically pricing low skilled people out of the market. We've seen this time and time again with lots of other jobs that we no longer have, like an usher at a movie theater. You no longer have this because it's no longer worth it for a movie theater to pay $8 an hour or whatever the minimum wage is. It's no longer worth it for them to pay that to this person because they don't get enough value out of that. But if they were allowed to pay them something like $4 an hour, it might be worth it to them. So that usher, which is a very low skilled job, there might be somebody making $4 an hour that's employed doing that if we didn't have a minimum wage. The same thing with people who used to pump your gas at a gas station. You used to be able to go get that type of service done all the time where they'd pump your gas, they'd check your air, they'd wash your windows and that kind of thing. But it's been priced out of the market because of the minimum wage. So people that used to have that opportunity for employment there no longer have that opportunity because the minimum wage made it too expensive for the owner and the employer of that business to hire that particular employee. So yeah, that is something to consider when you think about the minimum wage. The minimum wage does not guarantee that everybody is going to make the new minimum wage. And I think people obviously get that, because if they're saying let's raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, well, why 15? Why not 15.01? Why not $30 an hour? Why not $100 an hour? So the way that price is calculated is not based on anything behind economics or supply and demand. So it's not based around an actual efficient allocation of resources. It's based around an opinion of people, and that opinion is politicians that are using poor people and people that are less educated to fully understand the long-term consequences of a minimum wage. They are using the minimum wage in order to get kind of votes from people and to own that votership. And the people think that it's helping them when in reality it's hurting them. So the minimum wage is hurting poor people by destroying those jobs. But it does more than just this too. So people who used to work at kind of these lower skilled jobs, and they still exist, but as the minimum wage grows, they're destroyed more and more. But the idea of a job, especially low entry level, is to kind of learn foundational work skills like a basic work ethic, and learn maybe social skills with people, and learn kind of just on the job type things that you won't pick up when you're not working. So if you're working a low skilled job and you're doing it for a low price, it's still a good thing because you're picking up skills and you're starting out kind of in a economic, you're just starting out in life in a way. You're building your skills to where you can move up economically, and you can move up in the business ladder and that kind of thing. So somebody who used to pump tires and help service vehicles at a gas station for really cheap, they might also be, checking under the hood and looking for things and learning skills from higher paid employees. But now they're no longer able to do this because the higher paid employees, because their job doesn't exist and there's only the higher paid employees. So you're cutting these poor people out of learning these skills and developing these basic parts of working, and you're removing the ability for them to have those skills, and instead they're unemployed and they're at home playing Xbox or keeping up with the Kardashians or something like this, something that isn't as helpful for helping society out and building society. Now, you might say that these corporations like McDonald's or Walmart or whatever, that they're just being rich, greedy people, and the executives are keeping all the profits, and that should be funneling down to the employees. But if that really was the case, then why wouldn't you just start a company like Walmart or McDonald's and pay these people who are being used, like these low-skilled minimum wage type workers? Why don't you just start a company and start paying them more fairly if they're being exploited? You can't do it because they're not being exploited. They are getting paid what they are agreeing to be paid. Nobody's forcing anybody to work at McDonald's or Walmart or any type of job like this. So if people are getting a wage that is not fair to them and that is somehow taking advantage of them, then they're choosing precisely that. So if you're getting pay that you don't agree with, you really are agreeing to it. If you're getting used or exploited, you're agreeing to be used or exploited. So the bigger question is, why would you go work at a company that's exploiting you and exploiting these low-waged people who should be making more, when you could just go start your company and do that and pay these people who are unfairly being paid for the work they're doing? There's nothing stopping you from doing that. And the reason you don't do that, or people don't do that, and they'd rather complain, because it's way easier to complain, and it's way harder to actually start a company and pay people more fairly. But even moreover, these people aren't unfairly being paid, and that's the part that needs to be understood. They're getting exactly what, or for the most part, close to what that labor is worth. And that is how businesses work, and that is why they're paid what they're paid, and that's why people agree to it. And when a business makes a profit, or some CEO makes a lot of money, that's not a bad thing. They are doing more work, and they're making more revenue for the business usually than the low-skilled people. And yeah, they need low-skilled people, and yeah, sometimes they treat low-skilled people like crap, and that sucks, and that's not cool. But if it's a bad company that treats low-skilled people like crap, then they should quit. Just quit. You don't raise the minimum wage because raising the minimum wage doesn't fix anything. All it does is destroy jobs, and it keeps you from learning skills and all these types of things. So it's not the whole profit, business, rich CEO type thing that's a problem. Because if it was, you could become one and pay people fairly, and people would want to do business with you. But you can't do that, because if you were to do that, you'd be bankrupt. So these businesses kind of know what they're doing. And the people who are not making a lot of money kind of don't know how to run a business. And if they did, they'd be doing it. So it's weird for people to get upset about executives making a lot of money and low-skilled people not making money, when low-skilled people are choosing to make that money and blah, blah, blah. So I think I made that point. The other thing with that, though, is you hear that these CEOs and executives are greedy because they're taking these profits, but it's really these low-skilled people who want to raise the minimum wage that are greedy. And they're greedy in kind of a way where they don't understand fully the effects of their actions. So politicians are using them, saying that they should be being paid more, they should have a livable wage and that kind of thing. And what this does is it makes these people think that they deserve more money, and they're getting paid what they're worth. And to think that they should be getting paid more is greedy on their part, because you're getting what you're worth. And if you think you're worth more, you need to raise your skills, and you need to work a job that demands a higher wage. You don't need to force the government to raise a minimum wage. All that's going to do is destroy your job. It's going to make low-skilled people unemployed. So it's greedy to want to raise the minimum wage. It's greedy to want to force people to pay you more than you're worth. And you'll hear that we need the minimum wage to support a living wage. But the purpose of a job isn't to grant everybody a way to live with a living wage. The purpose of a job is to fulfill a need, and that fulfillment of the need is compensated proportional to how necessary and valuable that service is. You can't just have some random job that does no value to somebody and say that because it's just a job that you need a living wage for it. It doesn't make sense. So the minimum wage is not designed to support a family. And a lot of these people who think it is are people who have a family when they have a family and they're working a minimum wage job, but the time to have a family isn't when you're working a minimum wage job. Minimum wage jobs are usually jobs that are done by high schoolers or older people, or people who aren't in their prime as far as an adult. So you don't get a minimum wage job when you have children. You don't have children when you're working a minimum wage job. You don't do these expensive things that are going to tie you down when you are working a minimum wage job. A minimum wage job was never intended. It doesn't make sense for it to be something where you can live off of. And you still can live off it, but it's hard to live off it when you have a family and these things which you chose to do without fully thinking it through. So you can't be mad about this type of thing, because these are life choices, and the purpose of a job or a minimum wage job is not to provide a living wage for a family. It's just, that doesn't even really make sense. And then one other thing we hear about is how the minimum wage needs to keep up with inflation, how we keep having an inflation of like 2% a year, and if the minimum wage doesn't keep up with that, people are making less money. But this also doesn't make sense, because the minimum wage, a wage does keep up with inflation. That's just how it works in general. If there is inflation and people are making more, and then they're going to pay more. But there's a way more important thing to even talk about here. The inflation, most people don't understand why we have inflation. It's caused through an increase in the money supply. That is the definition of inflation, an increase in the money supply. The money supply is increased in America through the Federal Reserve. And when you increase the money supply, but you don't actually have the money that is circulating out to everyone, that creates a loss in purchasing power, basically. So what we're seeing isn't really inflation. What we're seeing is a loss in purchasing power. We're seeing where things become more expensive and our quality of life goes down. So we think that the right way to compensate for this is to increase the minimum wage because things are becoming more expensive, but we don't really understand why things are becoming more expensive. We don't understand the whole factor of the Federal Reserve and how it is extracting our wealth and our prosperity and our standard of living. So you can't think raising the minimum wage is going to be something to combat inflation. It's totally a different thing, and it has nothing to do with wages or anything like that. And it's just weird to think that inflation and minimum wage are tied. So anyway, the main point is that the minimum wage hurts poor people because it does. It creates higher unemployment. It keeps them from learning new skills. It takes them into where they are spending more time doing non-productive things as opposed to productive things. So if you really care about poor people and you want to help them, then you can't be in favor of a minimum wage because a minimum wage is hurting poor people. By raising a minimum wage, you don't guarantee people that wage. What you do is you guarantee them unemployment. And if you want people unemployed, then you should have the minimum wage and you should keep increasing it. If you want full unemployment, just increase the minimum wage to like $500 an hour. It doesn't make sense to have a minimum wage. It hurts people. We need people to work all levels of jobs and to provide all needs that people need as consumers. So having a minimum wage is a terrible thing for poor people. And if you're in favor of the minimum wage, then you're in favor of hurting poor people. So thank you very much for listening, everyone. Have a great day.